It's morning huddle time. Chad Prinky here, as always, along with my good friend, producer, co-host extraordinaire, Stacey
Stop.
Holden. Stacey,
Hey, how do you want us to install this water heater? And my coworker was like, I don't know, install the water heater. Like, why are you even asking me? He's like, well, I don't know if you know, but what you designed, it can't physically fit through the front door of this building.
My class is only 40 minutes. So we have to get this done in 40 minutes. You have to clean up in 40 minutes. And then it also, when you use the miter saw, a lot of kids are scared of the miter saw, and you just see the difference in their confidence when they come in here compared to when they leave. They're excited.
Be announcing a new county that's going to join us in Maryland, so we continue to spread it. And I'll say my peers across the country are starting to take this and adopt this at their local IEC chapters.
Either AI assistant tools, you have AI master builder tools, and then you have kind of a bit of both that are 1 foot in BIM, in current processes, and 1 foot in AI.
Said, Brett, in life, opportunity meets you at your level of preparation.
She said, here's the keys, go forth and do great things.
it's morning huddle time. Chad Prinky here, alongside my friend Tom Hughes, who is distinctly not Stacey Holzinger. Tom, what have you done with Stacey?
She is hidden away for a short period of time, maybe for a few weeks here in March. Her whereabouts will be revealed at a later date.
Yeah, I received one of those notes where the things are cut out of magazines, where the letters were cut out of magazines.
A ransom letter.
Yeah, but it just said, Chad, I'll be on the chat today, heart Stacey. So I don't know why she felt like she had to cut out magazine letters, but that's her style, guys.
They can be recycled.
That's right. I think that's what she's doing. She's just showing us.
She's upcycling her magazines.
Reduce, reuse, recycle. Tom, what's new in your world, man? How's things at Genesis, and what have you been up to personally?
Things are going well for us. We've got a lot of potential projects coming on the horizon. We got some things that are in flight. And kind of expanding our reach here in the Mid-Atlantic and beyond a little bit. Personally, just kind of, I was coaching my son's basketball team, which that was an experience. I figured out immediately within the first game. I understood why Bobby Knight threw chairs across the.
I could see you being a chair thrower. I could totally see that.
But that's done with now. And I think
how old were the kids?
It was 5th and 6th grade, but they were 5th and 6th grade boys, and they were great. It was a lot of fun. I didn't start the season anticipating to coach, and after the first practice, I just went up to the coach. I'm like, hey, look, I can help you out here. And we took it from there. But it was fun.
I've gotten only involved as like an assistant here and there periodically with the kids' sports. I always enjoy it. It is a huge time commitment when you take it on all the way. But I've known many friends who've gotten into being the head coach, kind of thing, and they don't regret it. I think it's a good experience overall, despite the amount of time that it might take. So, and chair throwing that it may induce.
And like you legitimately see the kids having fun, which is good, and you kind of, a lot of times when we're even away from the world of sports, we kind of forget about what's fun.
Yeah, man.
So that's always good to see.
It is fun. What is fun? Well, business is fun. I have a good time with it. So real quick, just because I always am interested in hearing from different people in different markets and such. What are you finding is the most active market segment for you right now in terms of types of product types and industry focus?
Well, so we're pretty niche where our focus is life science. So,
Yeah.
but what we're seeing within that is, of course, a lot of cell and gene therapy. Um, that technology over the past, 5, 6, 7 years has really exploded, and you're seeing a lot of new clients in that realm.
And what are the space requirements for that type of work? Is it ground? Is it base building stuff, or are you fitting out existing structures and what's like?
Yeah, well, fitting out existing spaces, you've got all different, um, different kind of use groups where you've got R&D spaces, you've got production spaces, and the different scales, as you go along. So mostly where we work in is the R&D and kind of the lab scale.
Mm.
But we'll do it all for our clients.
That's awesome. All right, good. Well, thank you for that. I like I say, I always try to stay up to speed with what markets are moving and what's driving. Construction's it's a service industry that manufactures stuff for the rest of the entire economy. So everybody that needs a space for anything is relying on the construction industry to do that. And so it's always interesting to me what is going on in the economy that's causing the need for construction. And
Right.
that's news to me, that cell and gene therapy in construction, driving construction requirements is pretty cool. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So I want to introduce our guest today. Today we've got Pat McGettigan joining us. Pat is he is the executive vice president of products and integration at Accelerate Manufacturing. He's going to talk to us about modular in MEP, and he specifically has a whole bunch of experience in doing this with the electrical side of things. And he's got, I think a pretty cool story, tons of experience to share, and I look forward to getting into the discussion. Pat, thank you for joining us today. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah,
Hey, Pat, good
absolutely.
morning.
So Pat, if you wouldn't mind, give us a kind of minute or two about your story. What are you doing exactly? What's your company do, and how'd you end up where you are?
Yep, appreciate that. Can do that. So with who I'm at now, so Accelerate's a manufacturing division of FTI, Faith Technologies Inc. Traditionally based as an electrical contractor, founded in 1972. Roughly 3,000 employees, national footprint.
FTI or Accelerate has 2,000 employees?
FTI has 3,000. Yep. Yeah. Right now in Accelerate, we've got over 700 in our manufacturing facilities.
Cool.
Been with Faith 11 years. Prior to that, I had my own business. And for 27 years, I've been in the mission critical / data center space. So I've seen a lot of changes. I started as a UPS rep back in the mid to late 90s. And that was an interesting endeavor. And then transitioned into doing generators and then doing design work, installs, kind of the full suite of services, kind of like Tom had mentioned earlier, right? Doing whatever we could for our clients. So got acquired by Faith in 2013 to get into the data center industry. And then
that's not a bad time to have joined that space, right?
Correct. Exactly. So we got into the data center industry, then started working. We were heavy industrial electrical contractor by background, but then got into the data center space. So
yeah.
It's been a great fun ride. And that's what's kind of driven us into some of the things we're starting to do with offsite construction and trying to drive productivity and efficiency. Yep.
Makes a lot of sense. And I just, speaking of broader economic conditions that drive construction, data centers have been a space since I'm, probably before 2013. I'm not that dialed into when it all started, but it is just continued to be the most vibrant market sector in the world for construction right now. I mean, I don't think there's anything that's going as hot as data centers.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, right? And we've had some waves, right? We kind of had, we had the Y2K thing that drove a lot of things that were interesting, right? And then in around 2010, we had another wave, and now we're seeing another one. And what's really driving that is all the things you're hearing about machine learning and AI.
All AI. Yeah, that's
absolutely what's driving this industry right now. And it's how fast can you get there? So
crazy.
And then the other piece of that is right, because now what they're all calling for is more chips. So you also hear about all the semiconductor facilities that are being built in the U.S. right now too. That's pulling a lot of labor as well, right? And then I think the third big driver right now is the EV market, right? So there's a significant amount of battery plants being built right now, and these aren't small. None of these are small projects, right? They're all what we consider megas.
Yep.
So it's an interesting time right now.
It is an interesting time. There are one mega project after the other, which just is awesome opportunities for a whole bunch of reasons, and at the same time wreaks havoc on the rest of the industry.
Yes, exactly.
Everybody's pulled into these mega projects, and it's really, really difficult to manage all of that. We were talking just before coming on the air today about, the labor situation and the humans that we are lacking in the construction industry. And I pulled this quick statistic, which was, right now, the latest data shows that we have 9.5 million job openings in the United States. Now, this is across the entire economy, but only 6.5 million unemployed workers. So even if every single one of them was placed in a job, we still have 3 million less people than the economy wants us to have. And I think, that becomes a more specific problem when we look at the MEP trades. What kind of data do you have on that?
So like it's almost in line with what you just said, right? The last statistics I heard is about over 9 million people in the trades. And right now we're roughly, between 650,000 and probably 1 million people short.
Wow.
So that's a big delta there. But the other thing that's tying into this, and if you go on the sites, and Tom's probably aware of this too, right? You guys go to a construction site, you're going to see a lot of the people in the trades are getting ready to retire. And I believe 50% of the workforce today will be retired before 2030. So not only are we exactly. So we've got all these numbers which, everything's ramping up, but then we've got a bunch of people that they're in the twilight of their career. And we've got people that work for us, and Tom probably the same way. We got people that work for us. We just had a guy retire yesterday that's been here 40 years in the field.
Wow.
I think that's something we've been kind of seeing for a while, and everybody's just been kicking the can down the road. And now, all those, all that's gonna come home. We're gonna see a shortage here in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. And that's where our CEO, 6 years ago, when we really started going heavy, we'd always done, what we would consider prefab for our construction sites. But we really started pushing limits probably 6 years ago. Because he saw the need for trying to drive some creative ways to get things done. And that's what started driving us to do offsite manufacturing and do products that could, we look for the heavy hitters, the stuff that's got the most labor in it that we can really move the needle on is what we're trying to do. And that's why, specifically data centers and some of the semiconductor stuff and the battery plants align well with that, because there's typically quite a few things on the electrical infrastructure side that we can pull off and make it work. It creates efficiency, it creates productivity. We're trying to do a better quality product. We can do a lot of things on the front end before we get into the field to do commissioning. And the thing that we're trying to catch up with mechanical, because for years mechanical trades have done this, right? Yeah. With modular chillers and doing all the piping and all the duct work. They've always been very creative. So we're just trying to catch up in the electrical side.
Yeah, and you have a lot better control when you're in a controlled environment. You've got better quality control. You're putting people in positions where they can do things safer.
Exactly.
So, there's a lot of factors that will want a company to move towards a prefabricated model or, more modularization. It gives you a lot better control.
Yeah, and the safety piece is a huge thing to that, right? I mean, the more we can allow people to work safe, the better, and keep them away from having to do things that they know are going to be risky. And then the other piece of that is really think you got to begin with the end in mind, right? If we went back 10 years ago, what we would do is we'd take a traditional drawing set that normally would be stick built in the field, right?
Right.
And then we're going to try and say, okay, now what can we take out of that, and maybe we can do it off site. Now you got people that are really starting to think about, okay, we're going to design for modularity. We're going to try and position these things so it makes sense. We got to think about logistics, because we're shipping stuff all over the country. We've shipped stuff all the way up to Oregon, and we've shipped all the way out to Virginia.
Where's your where are you manufacturing from? Is it Tennessee?
We're in the Midwest, so we've got roughly, we'll have 1.6 million square feet by the end of August that we do this in. So we're in Wisconsin, pretty heavy presence in Wisconsin, and we've got a heavy presence in Kansas City, specifically Olathe, Kansas, which is just southwest, but which is good for us because we're pretty centrally located to be able to ship coast to coast. But that's the logistics piece is something that you really have to think about too, and you got to look at the widths and the lengths that you're looking at, the weights, and you got to get pretty creative with making sure you plan the routes and understand what you're doing with that. We try and limit the heights to being under 14.6 total because that's what you can run under interstate. So we try and do that, but it's you got to be creative with it to try and make it work.
No doubt. Yeah, that's you're getting into a whole. I mean, when you get into the modular offsite construction, when you get into offsite construction in general, you just volunteered not only to get into manufacturing, which you knew, but you got to get into logistics. Yep. That's a piece of it. So you now have a logistics arm, which you've never had really. If you're used to building stuff out on site. What are some of the biggest lessons learned along that journey? When you think about how you've been successful and maybe the hard lessons learned that you'd pass along to the audience?
Yeah, I think so. One of the, and I would say probably lesson learned and benefit for us is we're pretty fortunate that we were able to bring in some pretty skilled people that have been doing this stuff in the field for many years. And then we kind of mix that with manufacturing minded people. And then we merge that, right? And we're creating a hybrid. So we've got all that talent that we brought from the field that has years of construction experience. And then we're bringing these manufacturing principles and saying, we're doing 5S, we're trying to do lean, we're doing material planning, we're looking at all the routes that we're going to flow through our facilities and understand how things are going to move back and forth, right? And then we're applying the best practices of construction to say, well, this is how you need to strip a wire. This is how you make sure you don't have any impacts. This is where so we're trying to align all those things, right? And then we try and drive processes and procedures to make sure we're standardizing, right? And then the same thing is going to have to be, you have to pull your site teams in and say, okay, here's the plan that we've got for bringing stuff to the site. Here's how we're going to implement. Let's make sure you guys have your logistics set up on site as well to bring these, typically let's say on a data center, you bring generators in and you've got switchgear coming in and you've got some big mechanical pieces. But today we probably have 3 times the amount of trucks that are coming to a job site with larger things that are going to be crane set, right? Versus stuff that would typically maybe come in a box truck or a flatbed. Right. So it starts in facility and it goes all the way into the site implementation.
Right on.
Yeah, you're focusing a lot on, just in time deliveries as opposed to, sending boxes of materials onto a project site, which, we look back and we talked about safety in terms of getting people, kind of in the right positions and everything, but also, by executing projects in that fashion, you've got a lot less crap on the project, at the project floor that creates a lot cleaner space to work in.
Yeah, exactly. You're hitting the nail on the head, right? So we're decluttering. We're also trying to limit trade stacking, which is something else that typically is going to happen when you've got, a ton of stick built stuff going on. We're all working in the same space at the same time, so you can coordinate that better. So those, and that's really some of the stuff we've learned is exactly that. Like ship loose can be a problem. Like everything we ship is going to have a ship loose package with it. Better make sure that's identified. Better know exactly where that's going. So always trying to push limits on how we're going to do that. And then some of the stuff now, even with AI and be able to do air tags and things that you can track specifically and find out exactly where things are going and where they're at.
That's cool.
So those are some of the things we're trying to push the limits on.
Yeah, I like it. That's cool. So, some of our audience is all over what you're talking about, and sitting there probably with examples and stories and experiences of their own where they're already down the road on offsite construction. There's another portion of our audience, it might even be a broader portion of our audience, that vaguely knows what offsite construction and modular is all about, but that isn't close enough to it. They're not spending a lot of time with it. One of the things that I think helps to drive the message home and help to inspire the kind of excitement about this that I know you have are specific stories. Are there examples of where you could kind of talk about how it would have always been done, what we've chosen, what you were able to do instead, and the positive net impact? And we've talked about things in general terms, but the impact of that on a given project as compared to what it would have looked like in stick building it on site as you described.
Yeah. So an example would be on a data center. You can pick a mega site, but we would typically peak, let's just say on a 40 megawatt plane, probably we're going to be 400 plus electricians in the field if we're stick building.
Okay.
Right?
So, and I've heard about this, right? That the data center market is one of those spaces in particular that is just extremely demanding on labor. So if you don't have it, you can't really play in that space. And so you would have 400 electricians on site at the peak.
Yeah. And for Tom and I, right, that MEP ends up being in a data center is probably 70% of the work.
Yeah, right.
It's just the nature of what we're building. But with doing some of the things we can do with working with the client, working with the engineers, working with the overall team, and driving that offsite productization, we've reduced it down to 150 or less electricians in the field. So you've really swung that delta. Now we've got a ton of people that are working in our facilities, right? And kind of what's kind of cool about that is we're really able to get ground up growth started in our facilities. So we're bringing people in to work in our facilities. We're training them. We have our own apprenticeship program. Then they can get out to the field. So they're getting exposure to things they probably wouldn't have seen maybe 5-10 years in the field. Now they're seeing it all right away. But that's kind of the delta, So, and then you're probably reducing your labor hours. It's just such a significant amount of labor that you're reducing in the field. And then if you look at the efficiencies we can drive and the safety we can drive inside of a facility, right, that's purpose built, that may have bridge cranes or we're running gantry cranes. We're trying to find every way we can to work safer. We're trying to eliminate ladders, right? Let's stay off of ladders. Let's find ways to do that. But you got to get creative with it.
Right.
But the delta, you can, if you look at and begin, like I said, begin with the end in mind, I believe you can drive 60+% offsite.
Wow.
If you do it the right way. Now the project's got to be aligned with that, right? And there's a certain industries, like you mentioned, data centers, I think semiconductors, another one, battery plants. I mean, there's probably things in life sciences or heavy industrial projects that would be another target, right? That you can find ways to try and do that.
I think one of the big things is you got to find things that are repeatable.
Exactly. That's the key.
That you can recreate very easily going from one space to another.
So you're bringing up a good point, Tom. So that's the other thing, right? Is if people, it's kind of in our DNA, people want to be creative and kind of change things. Well, that doesn't really align well, right? So if you can have a runway and run a similar design for maybe 2 years, right? Unless technology changes so drastically that you have to adapt faster, which typically is happening in a lot of things we work in, right? But repeatability and be able to run that for a cycle to be able to gain the efficiency that you can in a manufacturing environment and then drive that. And then try not to drastically overhaul it, but try and find ways to continue to improve it.
Yeah, and one of our strategies in the life science market is you got to get with the end users and make them understand that we're trying to build a lab for modularity, and it's not going to be this custom one-off lab. We want it to be able to be a flexible space, which if we can have a flexible space, we can make that a repeatable space.
Exactly. Yep. Hitting the nail on the head.
So it's you got to get buy-in from the people driving design.
Well, that's exactly the begin with the end in mind. You got to start even before that. You got to get buy-in from all the key stakeholders as you're entering your early stages of design.
Yeah, and I think the other key to that, right, is to your point, right, is the team's got to be even the overall. So from the front end team that's working on it, that wants to implement this, to the team that's going to have to deploy it in the field, make sure everybody's bought in and make sure everybody's talking about it, right, and try and figure out what the wins are going to be for everybody to make it a successful project, right? Be able to be under budget and on time or ahead of schedule, which that's not easy.
And everybody's got to understand that, you can't, when you're building in this fashion, there's no last minute changes. That's
right.
You're not gonna defab the prefab so then you can refab the prefab.
Exactly. That was some good lessons learned on the front end when we started doing this. I will tell you that. We had plenty of stuff that we had to rework.
I believe it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the front end here for a minute. That's one of the thing, and Tom knows, Pat, I don't know that you and I have talked about it, but at Well Built, that's my company, and we have a team of consultants who are working with contractors, general contractors, trade contractors, specialty contractors all across the industry to help them with their overall strategic plan and make good decisions about how to be the best possible company they can. And one of the topics that we get into frequently is what can you do to create efficiency through embracing, more offsite construction. And there's just a lot of question about, are we ready for that? There's a lot of question about when does it make sense to get into that? What if we spend all this money and we don't get an ROI? What if we get, we build this facility and we don't get use out of it? So I'll I guess maybe zoom you all the way back to when, this started to become a thing in your world. If you were giving advice to a contractor on if and when to embrace offsite, what are some of the kind of, conditions, pre-existing conditions that you'd want them to have in place before they started going down this road?
Well, make sure, first thing is make sure you include, we kind of talk about the key stakeholders. Like one of the lessons learned that we had was in the beginning, we probably didn't bring in our site leadership to the level we should have, right? Get their buy-in. Like in the beginning of what we started doing 10 years ago, they thought we were trying to take away their skill, right? And their expertise. And that's absolutely not what.
If you're as you're doing this, make sure you're building buy-in at the superintendent and foreman level so that these are people who are excited about it, see where they fit, and they're not intimidated by it and naturally want to push back.
Well, and their initial reaction, but we were trying to take my job away. Oh no, we're not. We're trying to make your job more efficient and get you and continue to make sure you're doing what we need you to do, right? And we want to use their expertise, turn them in, and then let them focus on what they're really good at, which is playing on a job, right?
Cool.
So we got through that, and when we got bought in, things became much more seamless, right? Think about the space you're going to need if you want to do this, right? What kind of facility you're going to have set up? What tooling do you need in your facility to be able to do this? And don't try and do it all at once, right? Mm-hmm. If you want to get into this, start small, like we did. We started with prefab assemblies. We were doing conduit runs. We were doing hangers. We were doing duct bank. We didn't try and
stuff that could go fit in the
gorilla all at once. Yeah, exactly, right. And then we transition into much bigger things, right? But that's the key is and then stick with it, right? It's not easy to begin with, right? It's gonna be challenging, but stick with it, and it gets easier. And then get the buy-in from your people. And overall, for us, and our CEO talks about this, in our industry specifically, we were awarded, I think we were one of the safest contractors. I'm going to say it was 2010. And I'm probably going to get these stats wrong, but let's say our average tenure in the field was 10 years. And I think that year we had 60 recordables. Okay. Fast forward to 2020, we win it again. And our average tenure was probably 5 years, and we had 6.
Wow.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Now we're in 2024. Our average tenure is probably 2 to 5, right? And now we're trying to get to zero. That's our goal, is to have zero recordables, right?
Right.
So it's just what we've been able to do, and it's a combination of things. It's our people working safer. It's the way we do safety at the site level. It's a lot of the stuff we're planning better. We're pulling stuff off site that doesn't make sense to be doing in the field that could be more risky, right? So that's some of the other thing that I don't think enough people look at is, okay, look at what the safety numbers are with some of the things we've been able to do. And this is a global thing. This isn't just one. I won't put our finger on one thing with this, and it's our culture. Our people just love to work safe. So they're looking for ways. Hey, we should probably try and do this offsite. How can we do this? So they're already thinking about it now.
It's part of the culture.
Exactly. Yep.
And I guess I love the advice of creating team-wide buy-in on the outset, because if you want it to really become if you want to accelerate that process of it becoming a part of your culture, you'll proactively address any concerns. Sorry, Tom, what were you going to say there?
No, that's okay. And Pat, I would bet that every bit of those 10 years between 2010 and 2020 was a slow shift in that culture to get you from 60 recordables down to 6.
Yeah.
In a similar span.
Exactly. Yep.
So I have a couple of questions.
Once that culture does shift, it's and you see everybody's bought in, it's a whole new world.
It absolutely is. Yep. I have a couple of questions here that I want to get in front of you, but before I do that, I want to make sure that we take a moment to thank our sponsors for the morning huddle and the people that are helping us to spread the word about this and make sure that we grow our platform. So the first folks that I want to thank are the folks at Sandy Spring Bank. This is a regional bank in Maryland. They do a fantastic job working with contractors, thinking like a business owner and becoming your partner and making sure that your financial needs are met. Second, I want to thank Katz Abosch, which is another regional accounting firm. This group is based also in the Maryland DC region, and they have a team of professionals who all have deep expertise in the construction industry. Really, only focus on the construction industry. I want to thank them for their involvement. I also want to thank Lawrence Law. Lawrence Law is a group. It's a boutique law firm of wonderful people who build great relationships with their clients and represent them through the most basic to the most intense legal needs that they have. And again, deep construction industry expertise there. And finally, Marsh McLennan Agency, which is really an all-in-one insurance, surety, fill in the blank group. They're a nationwide group with a great presence in every market across the country. And if you aren't working with Marsh McLennan for your bonding needs and you don't have a bonding agent that's a real consultant for your team, I'm confident that they have people on staff that can help to take that to the next level for you. So thank you to those 4 sponsors. We appreciate your help in spreading the word. So Tom, I'm wondering if you have any questions. I have 2 that have hit me coming through this process.
So one of the things that Pat was talking about was, kind of that shift going to modularization and the biggest, a major impact on their actual facilities. You've gone from guys working in a shop where they were, bending conduit and putting small assemblies together to now you're putting these large prefabricated transformer assemblies or panel assemblies that are going into wall systems. And, how did your shop facility evolve along with that? Like instead of guys using hand tools, you now probably have gantry cranes to move things around the shop, and you got everything on wheels. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So what we started with, our original facility was 100,000 square feet. And it's funny because when we first leased it, they were going to do 25,000, thinking that was going to be big enough. And then we said, well, the lease rate was great. Let's just do 100,000. And we had it full within 6 months. And that facility was really just, was doing duct bank, hangers, conduit bending. We did some panel builds, and we did some things of that nature, but we weren't really pushing the limits. So that was more, hey, let's get the tables at the right height. Let's do ergonomic studies. Let's make sure everybody's, not bending over a ton. So it was kind of simple things that started there, right? Then as we transitioned into some, now we're doing, modules that are 15 feet wide and 50 feet long and 13 feet high that weigh up to 100,000 pounds. Well, that's a whole different thing to try and move around your facility efficiently and make sure you're able to do it safely. So we do a lot of stuff with air skates. And then we've got a lot of bridge cranes in our facilities. We have a lot of gantry cranes in our facilities. So, but it took a lot of lessons learned, right? You got to think about what your floor thickness is. Are you going to be doing things? You know, we had a facility that we went into to do integration, and we had a big forklift in there. We picked a transformer, and I was walking down the one day. I'm like, hey, why does this look like a big chicken walk sideways down a facility? Well, those are all stress cracks from that transformer being rolled over the concrete. Well, then come to find out, that floor wasn't really set up to be doing that, right? Oh. So those are the things that you start to learn as we progress. But some pretty cool things that we've been able to do, and we've had people come and show us as we've been able to develop. And that's the thing I think you're going to start to see. I think you're going to, and we are seeing it, right? Even in the field, we're starting to see things that are developed with tools. You know, we don't have to use knives anymore, right? There's things that you know, Milwaukee and DeWalt and Hilti and all these companies are coming out with that are phenomenal advances in construction that we'll bring those into our facilities, but we're using them in the field as well.
Yeah.
So it's just continuing to evolve and make sure you're on top of that and understanding what's coming out that can make us work safer.
Cool.
That's awesome. All right, cool. One of the things that I've, you know, I want to pass this one along, came through our chat, is how much did your cost decrease by going modular?
So that's a good question. Now, really, what I would say is it's probably, I don't know that it's I would say the value increased versus the cost decreased, if that makes sense, right? In the end, if you the goal would be a minimum to kind of stay at the same or a little bit lower. It's not a huge delta because of some of the things you have to do to be able to create modularization. There's some things you're going to have to add, right? But the bigger thing is the efficiency, the productivity. And then I would say the thing that you can't necessarily measure is if you look at the projects is, did they meet their date, right? Did we extend past? Because typically that's where the cost really starts to escalate is if you miss your end date, that's when things really start to progress. So I don't necessarily have a certain percentage that I think our cost is lower. I would say it's either at or below what you would see on a normal stick built. But it also kind of depends on the industry that you're in and what you're driving with it.
So this is I also like the question, and I would love to see, this is not the right forum, but I'd love to see your P&L over the past 10 years, and I'd love to see the investment that the indirect costs and overhead that you've had to take on to to create the environment that you're trying to create for modular. And then I'd love to watch the direct costs, the direct labor costs decrease. But what I'm hearing, the recipe sounds to me like what you do is you spend money on overhead in facilities and indirect costs and equipment to fit inside those facilities. And bottom line is, it's overhead by another name, right? But you're adding considerable overhead and cost to be able to run your operation. And then you're decreasing the direct labor cost consistently throughout by reducing the number of employees required to produce that work. And then B, increasing efficiency through that employee base so that instead of something that would have taken them 20 hours is now taking them 14 because it's happening in this more controlled, safer environment and all that kind of stuff. Then we also catch some savings and in both financial savings and untold human costs by creating a safer environment for these people. Probably become more of an employer of choice because you've got a different roadmap, a different path that people, it's nice to sign up to potentially work in an enclosed space for at least part of your time rather than being out in the elements for all of your time, plus the training and education that you're going to get inside and all that kind of stuff. So I'm doing all the math. And what it at least sounds to me like is that at some point you probably will or have reached an ROI on the overhead that you finally start to probably get significant gains on the decreasing labor costs. But from the sound of your continued growth, those overhead costs have never stopped.
Yeah.
So you haven't
Yeah.
been able to pause on that yet. You probably, all in all, it may be about a level swap, but depending on your business's trajectory, you might get a faster ROI if you stop growing.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, right? So the thing is, like, it certainly costs less as far as just the pure labor to do it in our facility, because one, we can drive our labor costs down and we're more efficient, right? That's the whole goal of this. But then you have your overhead and your capex that you've spent, and then the other thing that kind of plays into this, like we talked about earlier, there's a logistics piece, right? So those are some things that offset some of the savings, but in the end, it ends up being it's much more predictable, right? We can give you dates that we're going to have stuff shipping way ahead of time, right? We know when things need to be at the site, and as long as the site can do what they need to do to make sure things are ready for us, we've got a pretty good recipe for success.
Yeah, that's awesome. And one of our show's best friends, long-term friend, Mark Drury, I'd be remiss if I didn't call out Mark. He's the man. If you don't know Mark, you should know Mark. He's just a wonderful person. And he's got a long history of pursuing and creating modular opportunities. And he did that very successfully at the place that he retired from, which was Shapiro and Duncan, which is a mechanical contractor here on the East Coast, that he has actually pasted some of their fab shop pictures, videos into the chat. So if anybody has not seen this stuff, you should definitely check it out. And Mark said at the end here, the savings is in time. The biggest adjustment is the upfront investment of intelligence. To be successful, you need to engage all the highest level stakeholders, from journey person to COO and planning. I think that's coming from somebody just like you, who's Pat, who's done it and been a part of it, but on the mechanical side, to stack on top of what you're saying. It's the bottom line is you do get a significant savings in terms of time, and there are other costs that kind of offset those savings. But I'll go back to what we've started with at the beginning of the show. What do we start with? We talked about the labor gap. Right. And so what you're also doing is you're not just solving a cost problem, you're solving a population problem.
Yeah, well, with the increased efficiencies, you're doing more with less, essentially, is how we're doing this. And as Mark notes, and Mark's one of my favorite, interactors of the show, this is one of the only ways we can increase our capacity to meet demand. You got to do more with less.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, in the Gen Xers really screwed up by not having enough kids. Can we just lay it at their feet?
Sorry.
I'm doing my part. I got my 3 little animals.
Is 2 enough?
Nope.
Well, I'm 2 and through. No.
All you did was replace yourself.
That's fine. I'm not trying to play zone defense.
All right, Pat, thank you so much for being with us. Any parting words?
No, I just really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you guys for having me on. This is something I'm really passionate about, and that's what I love, getting up every morning and getting into our facilities and working with our people and trying to drive this, and then love collaborating with people. So the more of this, the better. Really appreciate Mark weighing in. I mean, what he said is very well said, right? He's been doing this for a long time and he gets it. So it's phenomenal to hear that. So thank you.
Yeah, Pat, it was a pleasure speaking with you. This is something that is kind of near and dear to me as well. So awesome. Keep doing what you're doing. That's really great what you guys are doing over there.
Thank you.
All right, Pat, thank you so much. We were lucky to have you on. We'll talk to you again here in the future.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right. Have a good one. Have a good week.
All right. Tom, let's do a little recap work going into next week. So first and foremost, I want to direct traffic. Tom, have you been to the Morning Huddle ConstructionShow.com?
I think that I have, but not recently.
Come on, Tom. No, so well, you don't need to, because you're already subscribed. You do all the stuff, right? You're like, but if you're not subscribed, if you love this show and you thought, man, that was cool, I want more of these types of conversations, go to the Morning Huddle ConstructionShow.com. you can sign up for our newsletter right there. You can follow us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, yada yada, and make sure that you click subscribe so that we grow this viewership. And do me a favor and spread the word, would you? Tell some people about the show. Tom, I know you do, but I think it's something that if the people who are committed audience members who love the show because they believe in what we're trying to do, please jump on that and help to expand the viewership.
Yeah, just you tell two people and they tell two people and they tell two people. You know the deal.
It's compounding. Yeah, if I just it's just like I learned something like that in econ.
Right.
I remember. So I also want to talk about our guest next week. Next week we have Jennifer Todd. Jennifer is really, really well-known voice speaking to the construction industry about topics that we really need to hear and learn about. And what she's going to come in and talk to us about is unconscious bias, which is one of my favorite topic areas in psychology, is just understanding what's going on in our brains and why we think the way we do and the shortcuts that our brains have created and how sometimes that's actually hurting us. And so Jennifer is going to come and talk to us about how the construction industry shares common unconscious biases that lead to negative outcomes, and that'll be something to check out. So please do jump on that show. And if you can't join us live, obviously join us wherever you like to consume your podcasts. Tom,
Yeah,
I think
that's going to be very interesting.
It is going to be very interesting.
And the human psyche.
Yeah, and potentially even a little bit controversial, because there are some frustrating experiences that I think people have on either as a haver of unconscious bias and somebody who's like, I don't think I have a problem, and an experiencer of unconscious bias would be like, oh, trust me, you have a problem.
It might drive some introspection.
Yeah, it always does for me. I am not above being wrong. I'm frequently wrong. I'm sure I was wrong a few times during this show. All right. Well, cool. Thank you so much, Tom. It was great having you here. I always love co-hosting with you. It's a good time.
Yeah, it's always good to be here. Appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity.
You bet, man. All right, guys. We'll see everyone soon. Thanks.
Have a good week, everybody.